All right, today's lesson is 8-3, 8-4, day 3, and we are still looking at factoring quadratic trinomials in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. All right, go ahead and write down number 1. It's 2a to the third minus 20a squared plus 50a. Again, 2a to the third minus 20a squared plus 50a. Alright, so just like we have in the previous lessons, the first thing we're going to have to do is look for our greatest common factor, our GCF. And if we have a GCF at this point, we need to go ahead and factor that out before we factor further by grouping. So between 2 and negative 20 and 50, looking on my factor sheet, the greatest common factor between those three terms is going to be the number 2. Here I have a to the third, a squared, and a. So every term here has at least one a, which means I can also factor out 1a. So I'm going to factor out a total of 2a. Then I'm going to look back here and say, okay, 2 divided by 2 is going to give me 1. And then I had 3 a's and I took 1 away, so now I have 2. So that's 1a squared. Negative 20 divided by 2 is going to give me negative 10. I had 2 a's, I took 1 away, and now I have 1. And then 50 divided by 2 is going to give me 25. And I had 1a and I took 1a away, so now I have none left. So that is the first step. Now we're going to multiply just like we have in the previous lessons. Again, we're going to multiply our first and our last terms here inside the parentheses. So we have 1 times 25, which is obviously going to give us 25. And now we're going to list out the factors of 25. So according to my factor sheet, my factors of 25 are 1 and 25, and 5 and 5. I'm looking for factors that when added together will give me negative 10. That tells me that I'm going to have to be looking at negative factors because negative 5 times negative 5 is still going to give me a positive 25. So I'm going to break this negative 10a down into my factors of negative 5a and negative 5a. Now I'm going to bring down my 25 and my a squared. Now I'm going to further factor my two groups here. I have an a squared and a negative 5a. I can pull out 1a from those two. I had 2 a's, I took 1 away, so now I have 1. I have 1a here, I took 1 away, so now I have none. And here I have negative 5a and 25. So I'm going to pull out a negative 5. I can't pull out an a because 25 doesn't have an a with it. So when I pull out my negative 5 divided by negative 5 is going to just leave me with a. And then 25 divided by negative 5 is going to leave me with a negative 5. So now what's in parentheses has to match, and it does. And I'm left with a minus 5 because that's what's in my parentheses. And then in my other set, I have a minus 5 because I pulled that from here and here. Now I'm not quite done yet because I have to remember that I still have my 2a up here. And because this is not exactly like all the other ones we've done because we have to factor out a GCF first, we're going to go ahead and check this one real quick just so we remember how to do that when we have to factor out the GCF in the first step. So the first thing that we're going to do here is go ahead and distribute. So we have a times a gives us a squared. A times negative 5 gives us negative 5a. Negative 5 times a is negative 5a. And then negative 5 times negative 5 is positive 25. Put it in parentheses and bring down your 2a in front of it. And then you're going to combine your like terms. So you have a squared minus 10a plus 25. And I still have my 2a here, and so now I'm going to distribute. 2a to the third minus 20a squared plus 50a. And that checks because it matches what we originally started with. Make sure you have all of that work and that check written down before you move on. You may pause the video now if you need to. All right, go ahead and get down number 2. It's 6p to the third plus 3p squared minus 18p. The first thing I need to do is look at my factor sheet and see if there are any common factors between 6, 3, and 18. Once I look at my factor sheet, I will see that 3 is a common factor, is the greatest common factor between 3, 6, and 18. So I can go ahead and factor out a 3. And also, just like the last one we did, I have p to the third, p squared, and p here, so that means that I can factor out at least one p because all of my terms have at least one p. So I'm going to factor out a 3p in my first step. I'm going to take 6 divided by 3, that's going to give me 2. I had 3 p's and I took 1 away, so now I have 2. Sorry. Okay, now I have 3 as my next term. 3 divided by 3 is going to give me 1. I had 2 p's and I took 1 away, so now I have 1. And then negative 18 divided by 3 is going to give me negative 6. And I had 1 p and I took 1 away, so now I have none left. So now, just like in the last problem, I'm going to multiply my first and my last terms. So I have 2 times negative 6. And that's going to give me negative 12. So now I'm going to list my factors of negative 12. And I'm looking for factors that are going to end up giving me a 1 here. So my factors could be negative 1 times 12 or positive 1 times negative 12. Negative 2 times 6 or positive 2 times negative 6. Negative 3 times 4 or positive 3 times negative 4, all of which will give me negative 12. So now I'm going to start at the bottom and start adding these up to figure out which one's going to give me a positive 1. So I have 3 times negative 4. 3 plus negative 4 is going to give me negative 1. Negative 3 times 4 is going to give me positive 1. So that's actually what I'm looking for here. So I'm going to take this, and that's going to be the product of negative 3p and positive 4p. So now I'm going to break down my 6 and my 2p squared. So in my first group, I can go ahead and factor out here. The only common factor here is going to be a p. So I'm going to go ahead and factor out a p, which is going to leave me with 2. I had 2 p's and I took 1 away. Minus 3, I had 1 p and I took it away. And then here I have 4p minus 6. I can factor out a 2, which is going to leave me with 2p, and then negative 6 divided by 2 is going to leave me with 3. So my parentheses match, which means I'm on the right track. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that down, 2p minus 3, and then I'm going to put whatever's on the outside of parentheses in my other set, so that's p plus 2. Now I'm not quite done here because I have to remember, bring down your GCF from the first step, which was 3p. I'm not going to make you check this because it looks exactly like the one we just did. Just make sure that you have all of this work down before we move on. Alright, so go ahead and get down number 3. It's negative 3x plus 7x plus 40. If I look at my factor sheet, I can see here that the only common factor between all 3 of these terms is going to be a negative 1. I'm going to plot a negative 1 because my first term here is a negative 3 and I want that to be positive. So I'm going to plot a negative 1, which is going to change the sign of everything inside the parentheses. So now it's going to become a positive 3x, a negative 7x, and a negative 40. So again, I just changed the sign of everything inside the parentheses. So now I'm going to multiply just like I have on all the other ones, my first and my last term. So 3 times negative 40 is going to give me negative 120. Then I'm going to go over to my factor sheet and list the terms of negative 120. It's going to be 1 times 120. I'm sorry, negative 1 times 120, or 1 times negative 120. 2, negative 2 times, negative 2 times 60, or 2 times negative 60. You get the idea with the negatives. There's a lot of terms here, so I'm just going to keep going. 3 times negative 40, 4 times negative 30, 5 times negative 24, 6 times negative 20, 8 times negative 15, and 10 times negative 12. All right, so I'm looking for terms that I can add up to give me negative 7. I'm going to go ahead and start down at the bottom because I know that these are going to be smaller differences than the numbers up here at the top. Obviously, it's not going to be 1 minus 120. So let's go ahead and start here. Negative 10 plus 12 is going to give me positive 2. 10 minus 12 is going to give me negative 2. I'm looking for negative 7. So negative 8 plus 15 is going to give me positive 7. Negative 8 minus 15 is going to give me negative 7. So that's what I'm looking for here. It's going to be 8 minus 15. So I'm going to break down my 7 here, and it's going to be 8x minus 15x. Bring down my 3x, and bring down my negative 40. So now I'm going to factor by groups. I'm going to look at my first two terms and figure out what I can factor out here between the 3x and the 8x. I can pull out an x. That's going to leave me with 3 plus 8. Here I have negative 15 and negative 40. The greatest common factor, according to my factor sheet, between negative 15 and negative 40 is going to be negative 5. So when I pull out a negative 5, it's going to give me 3x plus 8. So in my parentheses, I have 3x and 8. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that down, 3x plus 8. And then here I have x minus 5, because that's what's on the outside of my parentheses. So I just go ahead and bring that down. Now I'm not quite done, because I have to remember I pulled out a GCF of negative 1 to begin with, so I have to put that back in front of the whole problem before I'm finished. All right, go ahead and get down number 4. It's 9a squared minus 12ab plus 4b squared. First thing we're going to do is look for a GCF, and if I look at 9, 4, and 12 on my factor sheet, I will find that there is no GCF here to factor out originally, so I'm going to go ahead and multiply my first and my last terms. I'm not freaking out because I have two variables. 9 times 4 is going to give me 36. And a quick glance here at the negative 12 is going to tell me that my terms to get that positive 36 are going to have to be negative. And I'm looking for terms that will give me a positive 36 and will add up to negative 12. So my terms are negative 1, negative 36 according to my factor sheet, negative 2, negative 18, negative 3, and negative 12, negative 4, negative 9, negative 6, negative 6. So if I add negative 6 and negative 6, that's going to give me negative 12. So that's what I'm looking for here. I'm going to break this down into two different terms. Negative 6ab, negative 6ab. I'm just putting the ab with it because that's what my 12 has with it. It's no different than all the other problems that I've done so far. I'm going to bring down my 4b squared and my 9a squared. Now I'm going to factor my groups. First, I have 9a squared and negative 6ab. Between 6 and 9, the greatest common factor is going to be 3. Both of my terms here have at least one a, so I can pull out one a. So I have 9 divided by 3, which is going to give me 3, and then I had two a's and I took one away, so now I have one left. And then here I have negative 6 divided by 3, which is going to give me negative 2, and I had one a here and I took one out, so all I have left is a b. So then in my second group, I have negative 6 and 4. I can pull out a 2. That's my greatest common factor here between these two terms is a 2. And now I have at least one b with each of my terms, so I'm going to pull out a b this time. So negative 6 divided by 2 is going to give me negative 3. And then I had an ab, but I took a b away, so now I only have an a. And then here I have 4 divided by 2, so that's going to leave me with 2. And then I had two b's and I took one away, so now I only have 1. So in my parentheses, I needed to factor out a negative 2 here. Sorry. I needed to factor out a negative 2, and this is a really common mistake that you might make, so it's probably not that big of a deal that I made it. And I have a negative 6 here, so I'm going to need to factor out a negative 2, so it's going to change the sign. So negative 6 divided by negative 2 would give me positive 3a, and positive 4 divided by negative 2 is going to give me negative 2b. So now what's in my parentheses matches, so that's why I needed to pull out a negative 2b. So let's go ahead and bring down my parentheses. 3a minus 2b is my first set, and then my second set is going to be 3a minus 2b. And I didn't factor out a GCF in the beginning, so I'm done with that. Make sure that you have all of that down before you move on. You can pause the video now if you need to. All right, go ahead and get down number 5. It's 5x squared minus 2x plus 24. First thing we're going to do is look at our 5, our 2, and our 24 and see if they have any common factors. And they do. We can factor out, and we need to factor out a negative 1 because our first term is negative. So that's going to change the sign of everything inside the parentheses. It's going to become positive 5x squared plus 2x minus 24. And now I'm going to multiply my first and my last terms. 5 times negative 24 is going to give me negative 120. So again, I'm going to list my terms of negative 120. Over here, it's 1 times 120. I'm not going to do the positive and negative this time. I hope you've got it by this point. 4 times 30, 5 times 24, 6 times 20, 8 times 15, and 10 times 12. So I'm looking for what's going to give me a positive 2 that is a factor of negative 120. So here, I can either have a negative 10 and a positive 12, which would give me positive 2, or I could have had a positive 10 and a negative 12, which would give me negative 2. But it needs to be this way, negative 10 and positive 12 to give me a positive 2, and that's what I'm looking for. So those are going to be my terms, negative 10x plus 12x. Bring down my negative 24, and bring down my 5x squared. So now I'm going to factor my groups. Here, between 5x squared and negative 10x, I have a common term, greatest common factor of 5, and then I can also pull out an x because I have at least one x term with each of my terms. So here, 5 divided by 5 is going to give me 1. I had 2 x's and I took away 1, so now I have 1. Here I have negative 10 divided by 5. It's going to give me negative 2. I had 1 x and I took 1 away, so I have none left. Here I have 12 plus 24. I'm sorry, 12 minus 24. 12x minus 24. My greatest common factor between 12 and 24 is actually 12. So I can pull that out, and 12 divided by 12 is just going to give me 1x, and negative 24 divided by 12 is going to give me minus 2. So in my parentheses, they match. I have 1x minus 2, so I'm going to bring that down, 1x minus 2. And then outside of my parentheses, I have 5x and 12, so I'm going to bring that down in my second set of parentheses, 5x plus 12. That is my almost final answer because I pulled out a negative 1 to begin with, so now I have to bring that down before I'm totally done here. This is your last example for this video. You can pause it now and get this down if you need to. Make sure you bring your notes with you to class tomorrow, and thank you for watching.